Okay, item number 8, Willow Road and Lakeside Mitigation Bank. Kevin.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. We were approached a few months back by a landowner and some of his representatives out in the El Monte Valley area with an idea that they had come up with for their property, 70 acres of undeveloped property out there, of wanting to conserve it and utilize the tool of a mitigation bank, which has a lot of moving parts. One of them being that some entity has to hold a conservation easement over the property, and we, of course, as a state agency and through our charter, are charged with acquiring property, but also holding conservation easements that protect the land and protect the river. So we are one of those potential entities, and they came to us to see if we would be interested in entertaining that. There's also another role for a land manager of the property, just basically making sure that the fences are up and that the property stays in good shape. And then, of course, the property owner himself would continue to own the property and generate revenue from selling mitigation credits. But I won't give it all away. I'll let the property owner's representative, Mark Thompson from TRS Consultants, introduce himself and give an introduction to the project and see if there's any feedback from the board. This item is noted as informational/action. We don't have a specific action at this point. If there were to be one, I'd recommend it that the board just take, if they feel comfortable with it, authorizing the executive officer to move forward with negotiations on the conservation easement with the landowner and his staff to bring it back to the board for potential approval, probably at a subsequent meeting. So, Mark, welcome.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and it's a pleasure to be able to address the board today. I'm Mike Thompson with TRS Consultants, and we're representing Pastor Paul Bertram and his congregation, who own the 70 acres of land that are located out in the lakeside area on the northern slopes of the San Diego River down Willow Road. Pastor Bertram approached us a while back wondering what he could do, sort of highest and best use with his land, and given the changed circumstances of the market and that sort of thing, we were pleased to be able to advise him that a mitigation bank would be an advisable approach. And since then, we've proceeded with introducing the land to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they've both come out and approved the site as a potential mitigation bank. We've submitted and have gotten approved our prospectus for this property through the California process that has recently been implemented, and we're just at the point now of preparing a bank implementing agreement and a whole suite of documents that would enable the bank, set out the mechanism by which the bank would operate. And we've thought of the San Diego River Conservancy as the ideal partner to oversee the easement for this property because of the breadth of your activities, your state status, and your reputation in dealing with issues related to the San Diego River. We see this piece of property as an integral part of the San Diego River watershed. It certainly is a part of the watershed, but it also provides an important link between existing open space up on the top of the hills and the river valley itself. It is an occupied site, that is to say it has a California gnatcatchers on it. Pardon me. About 57 of the 70 acres are considered to be occupied coastal sage scrub. We have 2.9 acres of non-native grassland and about 0.6 of an acre of riparian habitat as well. The idea of the mitigation bank, of course, is that people who want to develop land but have impacts on habitats can buy credits in a mitigation bank where land of a particularly high value already exists. Those credits, and once they buy the land is set aside and protected in perpetuity. So our next step then is to sort of tie down who our team members will be, and that's what brings me here today. I hope that the Conservancy can participate with us.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to answer any questions you have.
Questions for the board?
I have a question. Mr. Chairman, then who would manage the mitigation bank?
Supervisor Jacob, the bank would be managed by a habitat manager who would be a qualified biologist, and it would be written into the documents that a certain amount of time of experience would be required of that biological entity. And they then could contract with a habitat operator, someone maybe to do the removal of arundel or other invasive species, that sort of thing, on a day-to-day maintenance.
So that has not been determined at this point?
It has not. And we would look to our partner, the conservation easement holder, in advising us on that, helping us find someone. There are several groups out there, so it's not a difficult task, but
Is that, I'm sorry, is that something that the River Conservancy could or would consider, or is that something that's within our purview?
We could and we have, and we've broached it with both the owner and with the agencies. The issue that makes the agencies a little uncomfortable is they see this as kind of a checks and balances type situation. So you've got the landowner who's pretty much going to be kind of absentee at this point. They own the land, they collect the credits, but basically the implementing agreement then specifies certain amounts of funds to go out to the land manager as an entity and to the easement holder as an entity. And although we have the experience and the capacity to play both those roles, it's traditionally been seen that you have one sort of looking out after the other, and that one entity doesn't is the
Avoid potential conflicts?
conflict of interest or that issue. But thanks for the question, because we could actually play either role, and we feel that the conservation easement holder role is probably more appropriate for us at this point.
Other questions? Anybody else? So, Kevin, you're asking the board to, if we like what we hear, to continue the process down and then come back to us with a proposal.
With an easement to review and the bank, and all the documents and our deputy AG's ability to look at it and sign off on it and bring it back to you all. But didn't want to get any further down the road, working with the landowners without briefing the board and making sure this was an option, an idea that fits our mission and our goals and your approval.
I think it's a great idea. I would put a motion on the floor to, I think you mentioned, authorize the executive director to enter into negotiations with the landowner for accepting a conservation easement for the purpose of establishing a mitigation bank.
Okay.
I would second that.
There's a motion and a second. So,
May I just clarify, who is the owner again?
the owner, there are two owners. Pastor Paul Bertram is one owner, and then members.
Is he the trustee for, or is he the actual owner?
He is the actual owner. There are two parcels. The one parcel is owned by the pastor, and the other parcel is owned by collectively by his church.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we also have a couple of people in the audience from Lakeside. Do you have some comments that you'd like to make on this?
You talking to us?
Yes.
Can you tell? Well, we're just,
sir, would you please come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and we welcome your input.
I mean, is this something you would support and you feel your
No.
neighbors would support?
I'm not sure because we're hearing rumors out there that there's somebody proposing a solar power plant that we just absolutely don't want to see out there, and we're here because we're curious to see whether or not this mitigation bank is related to the owner wanting to build that solar power plant. But what it sounds like to me is it's a whole different area. It's on the north rim. And the property that I was interested in is down along Ammoney Road.
I think
So what I need to know is this mitigation related to this solar project?
No.
Kevin, why don't you go on the record?
No, it's not. This is a standalone mitigation bank that would be able to sell credits to any entity that needs to develop in other areas. Primarily, who's used them the most out in that area, just most recently, has been the county on the construction of the Flume Trail. They had to purchase some mitigation credits from an area outside. So the purpose of a mitigation bank is that you protect the habitat and it stays that way in perpetuity, and that's what the conservation easement over the property would ensure.
That's a great idea, and thank you for doing that, by the way, and hopefully we can save the entire valley.
Great.
Well,
Thank you for your comments.
this is a start.
Thank you.
It's 70 acres that will be preserved. If the negotiations go positively, which it looks like we have a good chance of them doing that. So.
great, thank you.
This is a good example where there's, you know, market-based and conservation coming together. You have a landowner being made whole and being able to turn, you know, a modest return on his property while not developing it and having all the
Well,
things
and
go along with that. So-
I was thinking also, Kevin, that it may give other property owners along the El Monte Valley the same idea. I mean, once they see this, because this is something new in the valley.
Yeah.
And it may give others an idea that this is something they can do to get some revenue from their property without developing it.
Right, and there's even options where a lot of these parcels in this area are what I call like piano key type parcels. They're narrow parcels that go up to the slope, so you've got a lot of undevelopable land up there. So even folks with existing homes and a small footprint down on the valley floor may have the option to, you know, put the rest of their property in conservation easement or mitigation bank, things like that. And it certainly strengthen it if you've gotten one right there started to build off of.
So spread the word.
Question?
I definitely will. My name is Billy Ortiz, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate
And,
that.
what about the riverbed itself? I've heard a lot of talk that you want to sand mine, you want to sell the land, you want to fix it, you want to take out the invasive plants by sand mining and selling sand or whatever. I understand that the sand is very precious out there and that there's a need. But that also concerns us as the people who live out there in the, you know, way of life. That's our heritage out there, you know, and to strip the land of, you know, what's there, even if they're weeds, you know, we love those weeds. That's what we grew up with, some weeds, birds, you know, whatever. So what do you have for? I guess my question is, are you going to protect, if you allowed to protect the entire valley? I don't mean just the slopes, but also the river bottom as well.
Well, good question, and to address your point directly, that as we pick up parcels, as like this one, if we're able to acquire it, then yes, we can do things to protect it. There are other property owners in the valley. There's a water district, and there's negotiations and lawsuits and all that going on that are working certain things out, which we don't control. But if it does fall under ownership of either through a foundation or us or somebody else of the county, then those questions are good questions, and the policymakers, then we're going to have to make a decision on whether or not that the uses of that property out there. But I cannot envision, just me, a mining operation out there at this point in time. But that doesn't mean it could never happen, so I don't want to mislead you. But
Yeah, or a solar plant.
well, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, you.
Any other questions? We've got a motion. We have a motion. Second. Ready to vote? All set to vote?
And since this is a vote, I know earlier we kind of skipped by the minutes with the all in favor aye, but since we have people on the phone, we have to do a roll call vote. So bear with me. Council President Todd Gloria. What's that? No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to confuse things. I get past my record of 4 o'clock getting us out of here, and I start to talk double quick. Thank you for the aye. Julia Alvis.
Aye.
Lorena Ortega.
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob.
Aye.
Chairman Van Clay.
All right.
Ann Haddad.
Aye.
And Andrew Pope.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes, Mr. Chairman. And thank you very much for
Thank you
the
for your
motion.
time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your input.